Finance Committee meeting to order. I know you guys have done a ton of work. Thank you. And I will kick it off to Eric for his presentation.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. You guys can hear me okay, right? Through the mic? Is Spencer on there? Okay. Hey, Spencer. Hopefully you can hear me as well. If you want to, I give an introduction here. Go ahead and pull up the budget worksheets, and we'll start with the general fund. But you've got a couple minutes here while you work through your share screen, because I'm going to give some introductory comments. Good to see you all again. As you know, and I know the department heads definitely know, Amber and Spencer from our team have been working with the mayor, your department heads, Lori, for the last several weeks. We're just in the beginning of July, and I would say from my review, I was telling the mayor, I was looking at it last night and this morning, you guys are probably 95% done. As I always say when I'm here, we work with probably 150 plus communities now and counties on their budgets. I don't know of one that I can think of that's this far along come July. So I think that's kudos to you all, but definitely kudos to you guys sitting out here. I know we can sometimes be annoying and a pain with all of our questions, but this will make your lives and Lori's much, much easier over the next few months as you get your budget done. I'm going to go through the budget worksheets today, but a couple of comments just to keep on your radar. I'll talk a little bit about LIT, income tax. As you guys know, there were some changes in legislation this past session, delayed that effective date a year to 2029. But I would recommend, obviously, you guys have that on your radar, start to understand what's going on. You guys have probably heard the MUST discussion or name quite a bit. But we'll talk a little bit about what that can look like a few years out. It's not going to affect this year's budget or next year's. And when I say this year, I'm talking 2027. The second piece is now we're in the first year or the first full year of known circuit breaker impact from Senate Bill 1. So that 6-year phase in, if you guys remember when I was here 6-8 months ago and we went through the different credits that are coming in over the next 6 years, 2% property classes, the different credits that are going to come in for the homesteads or homeowners, et cetera. You guys have seen the first year of that or seeing the first year of that in 2026. So why that's such a big deal is, yes, you did see an increase. And as you guys see on the screen here, just like in the general fund, you are seeing about $10,000 of circuit breaker loss a year. 2026, that number is certified. It's about 55,000. So 5.5 times the loss that you've seen in the past, but still a manageable number for you guys, just because you guys have a fairly low tax rate, a fairly low amount of loss to circuit breaker already. It's not as impactful to you, but when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, it's not nothing either. I mean, it's a few $100,000 for you all. And that makes it a lot easier now that it's a known commodity in year one of that 6-year phase in for us to extrapolate that into 27, 28, et cetera, because now we've seen that first bump of those homestead credits coming on in 2026. Last thing I'll say, then I'll get into the specific budgets, is in my review last night and this morning, what I was just telling the mayor for the meeting, I would call this a balanced budget. You have a couple of funds, public safety lit, seeded, I may be forgetting, and maybe general's off like a few $1,000s. But other than those two funds, everything else is projecting a positive cash flow in 2027 in terms of your funds. Now, I'm not talking departments, I'm talking funds. So I'm taking general as a total. You have some departments in there, you may want to make some tweaks, et cetera. I'm not overly concerned with public safety lit and seeded for the main reason that it's almost all primarily driven by capital expenditures. So that's one of those things, as we've talked in the past, and where I would recommend you all on the council, when the budget comes before you, obviously focus on all the individual line items. You want to know why there's changes, and that's why we put percentage changes when we get to the disbursement side, et cetera, so you guys can dive into individual line items. But what really moves your budget is capital spending. That's in your packet for every fund, shows you the capital expenditures, not only in 2027, but also shows future estimated years. Just remember, you have the ability, you can delay something, but it's going to hit at some point in one of these budgets in the future. probably when you have some additional restrictions as Senate Bill 1 continues to roll on. And then secondly is hiring. That's the other question. I'm sure you're having those conversations with department heads right now. Hey, what's built into this budget? Is this filling vacant positions? Is this hiring new folks, et cetera? Not saying all the other line items aren't important, but you guys are a large enough city. You're a multi-million-dollar budget. $1,000 here, $1,000 there isn't moving the dial. It is important for fiscal responsibility, but the things that really move the bottom line of this is capital and employees by far.
Can I add to that? And just so council knows, I think you all are aware that when he's referring to the public safety lit and seated, that is the renovation, the expansion of that Wells Fargo building that we purchased for the PD. Over a year ago, Eric and I discussed how are we going to pay for this. We're going to pay cash, so we're not going to take out any debt. We're not going to raise taxes to pay for that expansion. And I let them take that piece and decide or determine how we were able to pay for this. We've had it budgeted now for, like in our capital plan, for at least, I think, 2 years. Mm-hmm. And so they did a great job on figuring out where we can pull those funds from. Also, one of the buckets is TIF, because TIF can be used for public safety. And I have asked redevelopment to commit $1 million to that. So we had to come up with the other 2.5. So, and then if you look further in regards to capital, they also took the railroad overpass project and have kind of put some funding in placeholders. So as you get into 28, I think is the year we would most likely have to have those funds available. You'll see some shifts there, but they looked at all the different funds and we have that set aside. I think we're still going to be short unless we get some additional funding just due to increased costs. But so thanks for doing that. But that's why some of those other funds will look, I guess you could say, upside down. But they're projects we have to do. And, so just want to provide a little explanation to that. But good job.
And the only other thing I'll add to that, when the mayor's talking about it's unbalanced or it's upside down, you're going to have it upside down or negative cash flow. And when you hear me say, well, why is our financial advisor not overly concerned with that or saying, hey, this is basically a balanced budget except for those, I go back to they're capital driven. And as I've said many, many times, when you look at your core funds, this is not the utilities. I'm only talking fire territory and city core funds, your main operating funds like streets, general, parks, etc. You're sitting with about 50, actually probably a little bit north of $50 million. Okay. That's a very, very healthy cash balance based on your spending. So it does not concern me at all. If you all decide these are needed projects, you want to get them done, it does not concern me at all if you take the money from the right funds. Now, I wouldn't be telling you, hey, parks as an example, where you don't have a whole lot of reserve, I wouldn't be saying, hey, yeah, let's go spend over our budget in parks because you don't have the money to do that. But some of your funds you're on healthy cash reserves does not give me a concern. The number one question is, do you want to do the project? If you want to do the project, you have the cash reserves that we can, as the mayor said, strategically advise you on which funds to use. All right. Spencer's driving the screen. Okay. I'm going to start with the general fund. You guys all have these in your packets. I know the screen's not huge to see it on. Don't worry about the individual numbers. Spencer, if you can just move your cursor as I point to specific numbers, and I'll direct you where I want you to go on this. I'm just doing this in the order that I have them in my packet, so hopefully you guys have the same papers in front of you. So we're going to start with the general fund. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this. Can you guys all see from both sides? Okay, I want to make sure I'm not in everybody's way. First page in each of these, or the first section you're going to see, is revenues. And these are all set up with 5 columns on the revenue side. So you have 23 through 25 actual. And it's going to break down, the second column is account number and source. So this lines right up to Lori's system. This should match up to the department heads as they want to go look at specific things and say, hey, we don't agree with that number from Baker Tilly, or where'd that come from? You should be able to easily drill down into every single one of these numbers. If you go down to the bottom of this page, though, the number one thing I'm looking at is trend analysis. So from a revenue standpoint, that's both property tax, some of your state taxes that you get into this, like CVET, financial institutions, etc. It does have your income tax, your supplemental lit. Remember, income tax has several buckets. One of the buckets is general fund that goes into that. That's both your supplemental lit and your certified shares. Two things on that. Certified shares, remember, is the general fund's portion of lit today. 2029, if there's no change in legislation, all of your lit would come into the general fund and it would be called municipal lit. So think of municipal lit combining CDIT, public safety lit, and certified shares all into one bucket, and it comes here. We're not worried about that in your 27 budget, but that's in the future. Secondarily, I say this in the past, that lit supplemental where you've gotten 400 to 700,000 the last few years, that's the one you can't count on. Those are dollars that have been collected in past years, held at the state in reserve. They have XX dollars. It's your money that they've distributed. We don't count on that in any future years because we don't know until the year actually starts if you're getting that or not. Okay. When you add this up and you look the last few years, you've averaged somewhere between 8 and about $8.8 million in total revenue. We anticipate in 27, you're going to end up just under $9 million. So very similar to the past. I'll also draw your attention to that second line from top. That's circuit breaker. That's what I talked about earlier. Historically, about $10,000 per year. You see Senate Bill 1 kick in 2026, and it goes up to about $55,000. We're estimating it'll come in about $60,000 in 2027. That's the number that doesn't get certified until the spring, so it is an estimate right now. 2026 is the real number. That is the certified number. Next slide, if you will, Spencer. This is the rest of some of your miscellaneous revenues. These are things like building permits, some of the information or some of the miscellaneous grants and contracts that you get from police. These are pretty minor numbers, but you add those in and that bumps your 2027 estimate up to about $9,060,000 total revenue coming into the general fund. Next slide, Spencer. All right, now we're going to get into, and in the general fund, this one is a little bit different. I know most of you sit in departments that are in the general fund. The other funds that we'll talk about are what we call self-contained, so you won't see all of these, or non-departmentalized. You won't see all these departments. But for the general fund and for the council to look at, you have the department over to the left. So on this one, you're going to see 3 different departments within the general fund: mayor, clerk, treasurer, common council. You're also going to see the individual accounts and account numbers that match right up to Lori's system. And then same layout, last 3 years actual. What was budgeted in 2026? So what is your current year budget? 2027 in green, that's what you're focused on today. What are we proposing for your budget, or what are your department heads asking for in the budget this year? And then you'll see new on the expenses, you'll see dollar change and percent change. Very important. That's changed from 2025 actual. Okay, so that's a 2-year change from an actual number to 2027. Does that make sense to everyone? And I should have said this at the beginning, very informal. Department heads, questions from up front, interrupt me as I go. Sometimes I'm just talking, just don't raise your hand, just interrupt me. I don't really have a whole, I mean, we don't get into the individual numbers. These are really, we rely on the department heads, the mayor, et cetera, some of those meetings to say, hey, this is what we think we need. This is why. I know you guys have had these documents. If you have any specific line items you want to go through, please ask them. What I really focus on is the percentage changes. And where I see percentage changes that are 10% plus, because remember, this is 2 years, I start to dive in and say, okay, what's driving that? Do we have certain things that are really pushing this up or down? That's where I'm looking for questions, concerns, and comments.
I'll add, so yep. On the mayor, we got an increase in benefits. I added insurance 1st of June. And so that's what you see reflected in that $8,200 is 20% of those benefits are come out of general. So just because you can see that the mayor budget went up about $4,000 from last year, but truly, if I didn't add my insurance, if I didn't take it, we'd be at 101. So we would have dropped. So point that out.
What's the cost of living increase for the salaries, employees, and stuff?
So the way we handled this in the budgets for right now, while we're working on our premium for 2027 for insurance, most of the budgets, I think the clerk, I think Lori may have added something into hers, but really what we did is we just transferred the numbers from 26 into 27 because we're anticipating hopefully a decrease in our insurance premium for medical. And so we just kind of transferred those numbers from 26 until we know what that premium looks like so we can make the final adjustments there.
So Kevin, you'd see on most of these, if you go to the individual salary or some wage lines, like for instance, mayor, like he just said, it's the same number as the 26 budgeted number. You will see some that are slightly different, especially if they're filling vacant positions within that.
Yeah, we're anticipating that the savings with the insurance premiums would cover some sort of COLA if we decide to do that. But those numbers will need to be adjusted once we get the insurance premiums back, which we don't have yet. We had one meeting, Tina, a few weeks ago, I think, but we've got some questions that we're working with the medical trust.
And keep in mind, this is set up all through Excel and formalized. So once we get those premium reductions, which hopefully we know here well before you guys have to finalize your budget or consider salary and wage ordinances, we can adjust those down, hopefully. And then you guys, if you want to model through COLA, you want to say, hey, there's some certain positions we do want to raise or keep the same, et cetera. That's very easy to do within this model.
I think they anticipate having those numbers by early August, I think, right? Yeah.
One thing I see on here, not important really to probably anybody but Lori, anything you see that's a yellow, Lori, keep in mind those are accounts need created within your system. If you need help on that, let Amber or Spencer know. And Spencer, can you go back to the first revenue page? Because I did want to point out something there. You'll see these two, important for the utility folks and the fire in the room. This is, you guys had it in 26. It's carried over again into 27. Remember how we centralized IT into the general fund? So utilities are contributing to the general fund, fire is contributing to the general fund, then the general fund is paying basically all of the IT related costs. You'll see that as a department in the general fund now. It's much easier for you all to have a cost control and an understanding what are you guys actually spending versus, remember in the old days, it was like every fund had a little bit of IT, and maybe you guys knew. It was hard for me to even tell what you guys were spending on it because it was all over the place. That's not anything against you. It's just it was hard to track. Yeah. All right, go to the second page of disbursements, Spencer. Now we get into three more: Port Authority, Municipal General, which is one of your larger spending ones, and then City Attorney. Again, same lines. I'm looking at percentages. I'm looking at increases. I will say you see Municipal General has a 35% increase. A lot of that is driven by capital outlays, relates to some of those projects the mayor alluded to earlier. The last page of this packet, you'll see all of the capital that's allocated to each of the departments within the general fund. So I'll go through that in a few slides. I'm going to kind of go a little quicker, and then we'll come back to questions on general. If you go to the next one, Spencer, it's going to be a few more. Engineer, Tree Commission, Building and Planning. Again, you're going to have the green column. It's showing you your change. Keep going, Spencer. We'll take questions at the end. Next four, same layout. Next two, and then finally police and fire. Keep in mind, fire has a fire territory, which is a separate taxing base than the rest of the city. But as we did in 2026, we're also moving some salaries and wages and employee benefits over. We're actually moving a bit more over to the general fund from fire this year than we did in 2026. You'll see when we get to fire territory why we're doing that. General has the ability to cover some of this cost, where fire, as you guys know, has had pressure the last several years and cannot afford their entire budget. Just a quick refresh: fire territory, separate taxing boundaries because it includes the township and the city, but it's the same premise as the rest of your budget. You don't have the ability to go raise additional revenues in fire territory. It's not like you can say, hey, we finally filled all of our fire territory positions. We need additional monies to operate. The only way you really can reset that is if you reform a new fire territory at those costs. That'll make a little bit more sense when I go to the fire territory packet in a few, but keep in mind we're moving about $690,000 that in prior years, pre-2026, would have been funded all from the fire territory that's now being funded from the general fund. Even with that, you take the roughly 9 million on the first 2 pages that I talked about revenues, take all those couple hundred individual accounts. We're anticipating if you spend every dollar in this budget, you'd be at about a $7,600 negative cash flow. In all reality, you won't spend your whole budget. It'll be a positive cash flow. We're conservative on the revenue side usually, so I think you'll be in good shape. However, when you go back to prior 23 through 25, you guys were generating about a $2 million a year positive cash flow in the general fund. So what's this a result of? One, obviously there's been significant cost increases in inflation since 2023. Two, even though it's not a huge number, you have Senate Bill 1 now rolling in, which is adding some reduction on your revenue side. And then you're spending, in these past years, you didn't spend a whole lot of capital out of the general fund. As I talked about, municipal general, a significant amount of capital, and moving roughly $700,000 from fire territory over to general, that in those past years, you didn't have any of that cost. Does that make sense to everyone? If there's questions, jump in, but I want to show the capital here real quick too, Spencer, so they can see what's being funded. So here, again, this is the layout. I know you guys have all seen these worksheets. The council's used to this. This is what will go into that final 5-year plan that we update every year. Once we kind of have the finalized budget worksheets, we'll update that and give you guys the whole book. But remember, this is a section in that financial plan. Left hand is the department requesting or that has the capital. Let's call that kind of the owner of the project. Here is the project description. And then as the mayor talked about, this is where we look at your entire city, including utilities, including TIF, including all the funds we're going to go through today. And we start allocating to funding source. Okay, so this is where we're saying, hey, these are the funds that have the best cash flow, have the legal authority to spend on this type of project, and we would recommend is where the money comes from. No pride in ownership here. I would say we do this all over the state and the Midwest, so I think we know what we're doing here, but there's also some local things. You guys may say, hey, we'd like to look at spending from this fund or that fund instead. We're always welcome to that feedback. And then it has the 5 years of spending. So what you saw in this packet, mayor, building department, engineering, IT, and streets, all departments of the general fund, these are the capital items they're requesting. But you'll see some of these are coming from CDIT and TIF and a little bit from rainy day out in a future year, so on and so forth. The ones that are in the budget numbers you just saw are these bottom ones that say general and are falling in the 2027 year. So you'll see it's things like you saw in the IT budget. There's a server upgrade. There's a capital allowance that's related to some of the miscellaneous capital upgrades that are needed. There's a GPS unit in the engineering department. And then the mayor alluded to this earlier. There's some money in here for Wayne Street railroad grade separation right away, some utility work, some pre-work that goes in to getting that project ready. You will notice we're budgeting the full amount, but then the NDOT anticipated reimbursement is also budgeted here. So you have to net those numbers together. That's what you saw in the municipal general, was those 4 numbers netted together for that project. Questions, comments?
Yes, I have a question, and probably not directed at you. I was asked yesterday about if the city's going to do anything with Cindy Street and what our involvement might be in that.
So we have a little bit of funds budgeted for 27 for acquisition. The hang up is the owner of the property itself. The Freeland Group that owns the building and leases the property, we've had no issues with. They've had some turnover with the developer that owns the property itself, and it has been a challenge. So we're still working with them. Wendy's was the challenge. We got through that late last year, and now we're
Is our capital plan here showing acquisition funds? I'm not seeing that.
It's listed under, I believe that one is under CDIT.
Okay.
Is that right? Yeah, there's
Okay.
funds budgeted under seeded, but we've got to acquire that piece. And city attorney, Andy and myself have been working on that, and we'll see where we end up, but we've not given up yet.
Yeah, there's $100,000 in the seeded for that budget when we get there. Good questions? Anybody else? Department heads? Anybody? Anything? All right, I'm going to go to fire territory next, Spencer, just because it connects into what we just talked about. All right, so same layout. Same layout. Revenues on the first top of this. Adding them all up, fire territory does get property tax revenues. Has some fire contract revenues, interest. Those are the big revenues. 3.6 million is what we're estimating. That's actually just a tad bit higher than some of the past years. The other piece that I would note on this is your property tax credits. Again, that second line, this is one that's seeing even more impact than the city side funds. You'll see it's about 5-6 times what it's been in the past. So going from about $25,000 a year to about $160,000 a year. That has to do primarily with the makeup of that property tax base. Keep in mind, Senate Bill 1 kicked in those new homestead credits. Well, most of your unincorporated area that's part of your fire territory is almost all residential homesteads. So they're all getting that credit that hasn't in the past. That's why you're seeing more of a hit here proportionality wise than the city. Then we get into the individual line items, disbursements. What I'll draw your attention to here is you may notice right away, okay, from historical spending, salaries and wages going down from the 26 budget, employee benefits going down. Well, didn't we just talk about that we kind of held those things the same? Or for filling positions, wouldn't we see some additions here? Remember, that's part of that move to the general fund. That's why you're seeing it go down here, seeing the general fund pick up, and you're seeing it being with the filling of vacant positions as well. Next slide. For full year, I should say.
Eric, can we go back to the first?
Yeah.
Go back to that first one under revenues, the fire contracts.
Yep, right here.
Yep. What is that for? We shouldn't have any.
Do you guys have it? Well, I guess that's a good question. Is the only contract that you guys had in the past the one that is no longer in place?
Yeah. So that should be zero. It should be zero for 26 and zero for 27.
So that 49,000, Spencer, make a note, zero that out. That was the one township they used to contract with. Thank you, Chief. The rest of expenditures, you can see in highlight is the capital items. You can see there's nothing budgeted in capital here. There was some expenditures in 25. Remember, you'll see in the next one for fire territory capital, that's where we have your capital expenditures. Your fire territory general really doesn't generate enough revenue right now to do anything but operate. With all of that, $20,000 estimated positive cash flow, that's great. But look at the last budgeted year and last actual year where it was a significant negative cash flow. That's why we're transferring some of that salary and wage and benefit costs to the general fund. Your revenues just aren't keeping up at the pace of your cost. Next slide. Cumulative fire. This is that one that I referenced. This is primarily a property tax driven fund. This has some of your capital expenditures. You have $92,000 budgeted in capital for fire in 27. With that, we anticipate you're going to bank a pretty good amount of money in there. So I know a lot of times a question or common sense would say, well, the other fund has pressure. Why are we moving stuff to the general fund? Why don't we just move some of that here? This fund is restricted, can only be spent on capital upgrades and improvements. So you can't fix your budget issue with this fund. That's why we're going to the general fund. We also like to see you banking some money here because typically this is what we use when you guys have a big apparatus or capital improvement need in the future. Hopefully you have enough cash here to cover a good chunk of it.
For saving for the trucks.
Yes, we use some money from here and then we use some financing money too. Yep.
So the tender 25 repurposization. We did get a price on that, and it came in close to a brand new one, which was way more than we want to spend. So we are still working on that for the 2027 year. So,
Okay. And that's, go to that capital slide, Spencer, so they can see that. Yep, equipment, and then.
yeah, the TBD.
Yeah,
When's
so
the-
actually we don't have, so just, that's a good point, Chief. I had a note, I wanted to point that out. Your budget has 70,000 in equipment, 22,000 for a replacement of a garage door at Station 1. This Tinder refurbish is a TBD, so that is not in your budget right now. But keep in mind that $315,000 positive cash flow, if we get a number and you guys are saying, yes, we're going to do this in 27 before we adopt the budget, that's where that's going to come from.
Okay. What's the last, or what's close to the deadline date wise?
Lori, when do you want to make sure you have everything final?
Well, we'll present the budgets the first meeting in October.
September 15th.
September-ish.
Okay. And keep in mind, again, that's why I focus the council. A lot of times you have money in most funds. It's, do you want to do it or not, right? Because if you say, yes, the chief has told us about it, we need to do it, we're all in agreement that it needs to happen. Even if you didn't get that number, chief, until the end of the year, we would just work with Lori and do an additional appropriation out of this fund. Okay, but to make it as clean as possible, it'd be great if you had it here in the next 2 months.
We anticipate having it by September. So
And for those that may not know, we only have one tenant, so it'd be important to either refurbish this one or look at getting a new one at some point.
I have a quick question. Is this a statewide problem with fire territories? You deal with this a lot?
I'll give you my short version because I could probably talk for 30 minutes on this. Yes, it is. It has been the last. It's not even just a Senate Bill 1 issue. It's not like I'm blaming that, but it is an issue because what you're seeing is the cost of fire protection just going up, and it has been, I'd say, for close to a decade. Pretty, Chief can speak to this better than I can. I mean, I hear fire chiefs all the time on meetings talk about what a fire truck cost 7, 8, 9 years ago versus now, and I mean it's multiple times. It's not just like 50%. It's 200, 300%. Is that accurate, Chief?
yeah, so just not only fire trucks, but just our everyday, the fire gear that we wear. Just coat and pants, probably 5 years ago was $3,000. Today it's almost $6,000. So
I get that. My point is, what's the state legislature doing about getting it so we can fix it?
Well, let me add one more issue into this. This is a blanket statement, so take this as like a generality. With must, so I'm going to income tax now, where you're seeing the impacts of, cities that are over 3,500, do they opt into the county? Do they not? When you look at those analyses, and I'm going to say for more rural counties, and I would say DeKalb's got a lot of rural area in it, so that would probably match up there. A lot of times when you're looking at the townships, you're seeing townships get a pretty significant reduction in income tax, regardless of what's decided in this. Okay, so I'm talking income tax now. Kevin, you might be saying, well, why are we talking about townships? I'm talking about fire. Why I'm talking about that is you're seeing a lot of these. Before I go to that, secondly, have you guys all heard this kind of township scoring thing that's going on, where township consolidation, depending on the number they get? So you have that too. You're seeing a lot of these townships that are probably going to have numbers high enough that it's going to put them on the consolidation list with other townships or municipalities. So you have these two headwinds: reduction in income tax for townships, potential consolidation, rural counties. In a lot of the must meetings I've been in, these township trustees then are saying, well, okay, I'm not high enough that I'm probably going to be forced to consolidate, but I'm close, and I'm losing $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 potentially in income tax. I can't even afford to pay my NIPSCO and power bill at my volunteer fire station already. What am I going to do? What I have to solve this, right? Is to say, we form a territory. Why is that important? And I'm going to use you guys as an example. why that is important to you is if another township or two, or even another municipality that's contiguous wanted to come into your fire territory, you have to disband your current fire territory, reform a new one with the new units. That allows you to reset your budget number.
Mhm.
So what Chief just said is, hey, our costs have been going up 100% plus over the last 5 years. Your levy, your property taxes have been going up 3 to 4% a year. That's why you're seeing kind of this issue you're talking about, Kevin. So do you can this be used as a,
I'm hopeful for that.
yep, I mean, go back 30 years to Shepherd Kernan. That was, I think this will cause, it may not happen in the first year or two, but you get to year 4, 5, and 6 of this. A lot of these rural townships, they just won't have the dollars to do, township assistance, which is probably the number one budget line item. And it takes a lot to, even if it's a volunteer fire department, it still takes a lot to keep that machinery going, pay the gas bills, keep the lights on, all of that. It's very costly for these townships.
It's not what it used to be.
Yeah, and to add to Eric's reference in regards to the must, those meetings are kind of being driven by AIC. I have asked for those meetings since May. I think we're close. I've been kind of having those discussions over the last couple of weeks, and I hope that we're having one sometime the first part of August, so that we can look at that, because they do have that platform built out. And the first piece of the platform, I don't know if you've seen that, Eric, but
Yep.
First piece of that platform is that fire and EMS tax, that 0.4.
Yep.
And how that's dispersed, we don't know, but evidently this portal is going to show us. I would venture to guess that Auburn, being the largest department, there'd be hopefully a decent portion of that to go to the territory to help offset some of these costs. But we just don't know. I've not seen it. I've just seen the numbers that you have put together. But I think they're going to be fairly close.
The ones that I've seen so far, whether it's Ames numbers, AICs, or ours, they're all in the same. I've not seen any that are dramatically different. Two things on that. I don't think it's been posted yet, but I'm pretty sure later this month there's going to be a webinar that's going to have AIC, AIM, and us, all three on it, to talk about this exact thing. You need all these parties at least rowing the same direction, so to speak. So I think that'll be helpful to answer a lot of these questions. And then two, I've been involved in a lot of these must meetings that some counties or cities are driving right now, and have kind of already got the ball rolling. Hopefully your county will do the same, or you all do the same. I would strongly recommend you try to get those townships, libraries, all these units that don't have a vote or a say. They need to be there and look at their numbers. Because again, I'm going to say in rural, at least the ones that I've sat in on, rural counties, those are the heaviest impacts. I'm not saying you all don't have impacts, but like those are the ones that I was at a meeting last week, and there was a library director there, very, very small rural library. And he's like, I have nothing I can cut. Like, he's like, this is just going, it's either I'm going to not be open 5 days a week to fit within this, or we're just going to shut the library. Because he's like, I don't have, it's like his salary and, basically keeping the lights on. So you want to have those people at the table too, because depending on what you guys want to do as a county, as a municipality, there may be some things you're going to have to help out some of these units to solve these problems. Okay. Anything else on fire before we move? Looks like Spencer's back on. Let's go to Parks and Rec. It's the next one I have on my table here. Same layout. Revenues top half. You're going to, just lost you. $1.6 million is the budget. One thing I would note, I know most of you will remember this. If you look at 23 and 24 top line, you're about 1.1 to 1.2 million of property tax. In 25, that number jumps up. Remember, we shifted about $200,000 of property tax from the general fund to the Parks Department. We've kept that going through 2027. You'll see the same phenomenon of circuit breaker jumping up quite a bit in 26 and then into 27. About 75,000 is what we estimate. But we do anticipate you're going to have a little bit more revenue coming into parks than you did the last year and last budget year. Then you get into the the expenditure side on the bottom of this page, and then goes into the next page, all of the individual line items. With highlighted in orange is your capital. You'll see that here in another slide, but we have about $350,000 in capital, a little bit less that's budgeted in this fund. All said, spending about $1.6 million is up from prior years, but we still anticipate a positive cash flow. Again, some of the capital spending is driving a little bit of that variance, but there's also some of the other budget line items you can look at that have increases. Next slide, you'll see the capital layout. Oh, yeah, these are some miscellaneous. Sorry. Park non-reverting. I should have hit this one. Park non-reverting. This is where you guys run the softball league, etc. This is pretty what, and some of your other programs. Thank you. This one's self-sufficient, though. You basically try to only spend what comes in. So we're anticipating about 50,000 in, 50,000 out. I know you kind of manage that throughout the year. Next slide, capital. Here you see all the capital. Again, park, this is everything over the next 5 years on their list. Most of it coming out of park, except for one item in seated. That would be if you do the restrooms and parking lot, $1 million in 28, not in these numbers. But the numbers you saw earlier where it was highlighted in orange, that's the Rico Riki Trail, asphalt at the Lodge parking lot, and a vehicle replacement, as well as continuation of the Memorial Park Dog Park. And the big one is the Memorial Park Playground replacement, $175,000. Any input, questions?
Yeah, so I'd like to just point out over the last few years working with Eric, Lori, we have moved. When this administration came in, there was park capital being pulled from many different buckets. And I just would like to point out that we've done a good job, and Eric has worked with us. That if you look on here, other than the proposed new rec building down there at Eckhart Park and the restrooms, everything else the last couple of years has been coming out of the parks budget. We moved the 2 salaries back into the park budget, I think, in 25. So that is something that we've worked on the last few years, and something that needed to be, I guess you could say, cleaned up. So I just want to commend the efforts there, because I mean, they were being pulled from CCD, CCI. I don't even know what other funds, but we have gotten everything back into that budget. So been pretty pleased with that.
Similar to IT, it's just easier when it's self-contained to have cost control and understanding of what's actually being spent. All right, let's move on to streets, so NVH and NVH restricted. All right, same layout here. This is your NVH fund. Primarily property tax comes in about 2.2. We're estimating about 2.3 million in 27. You do lose about $112,000 estimated to circuit breakers, so you have to net those together. Some of your other larger revenues primarily is that state distribution of the NVH unrestricted dollars. You get about $300,000. The other half of that goes into the restricted fund and has to go towards paving. That's part of the gas tax dollars. You see that down here in your NVH restricted fund. Keep in mind, these are 2 separate funds. We show them together just because I think from a council perspective and department heads, you're kind of spending these interchangeably. Disbursements, very similar from historical years, employee salaries, wages, benefits on the first page. And you go to the second page where you start to see some of your capital line items, about $200,000 for those miscellaneous capital, paving, patching, so on and so forth. Some of that also you have utilities, repairs, kind of the normal things that go in. Other services and charges, that's where you actually have a lot of those kind of miscellaneous things that come up throughout the year that are spent. And then your bigger budget for capital, your CCMG match comes from that restricted fund. basically spending your portion of the restricted gas tax for your CCMG matches. I think the next page may show your capital. Oh, local roads and streets, get about $160,000 there, about $50,000 going to capital. So positive cash flow continuation of the last few years. Next slide. Here's your capital. Again, streets has a lot. See them all listed here, many in future years, but you can see some of the things that are hitting that MVH budget I talked about earlier. A dump truck replacement, that's the lease payments on the dump truck. You have the aerial tree truck lease payments that are coming out every year. Skid steer lease payments coming out. There is a leaf machine refurbish in there, but we anticipate an IDEM reimbursement. Truck lift gate, a new sweeper. Notice when you see the same number for multiple years, that's anticipated to be a lease done, a lease purchase. So keep in mind, yeah, we don't think you're going to get a lease sweeper for $95,000. You can go on down the list. You will see some of the paving, Wayne Street, additional, there's some netting as well. That's the part that's coming from the general fund I talked about earlier, but it is a streets request. That's why we're showing it in both places. And then your CCMG is the South Cedar Street, Inslee to 9th, 9th Street, Cedar to Union Streets portion of that, $1 million. Questions, comments?
I'd like to point out, so on streets budget, you'll see about an $85,000 increase in their capital at the, or excuse me, it was the other services.
Yeah, if you go back, Spencer, a few slides.
And the reason for that, obviously with cuts and so forth, they had added $75,000 to their micro seal budget to refurbish some streets. What will that give them, Tyler? Another maybe 5-7 years. So kind of a proactive thing that they're looking at doing, since we're going to face some challenges and we're still not quite sure what the total repercussion of that's going to be. And then the other one was they've increased one of their concrete budgets to continue to fill these sidewalk gaps throughout the city. So two things that need to be done. One's buying us some time. The other one is providing more walkability. So
I'll also point out, similar to what we talked about with IT, park, just getting a better handle on the budget. One thing over the last few years, I know the mayor and streets department's worked hard on is that other services and charges number he just talked about is kind of the recurring, ongoing, what things he just mentioned, and then capital outlays really being extending the life or new projects. In past years, that kind of got mixed around. Sometimes we may be double counting some in both places, et cetera. I think this is probably the cleanest and clearest that budget's been in several years.
And then in regards to the leases, that is something that's a tool we have to leverage funds where it's done through the Indiana Bond Bank. So when we get done paying that fourth lease payment, we own the truck. It's not like your typical car lease, but it does allow them to leverage the funds, especially when they're facing some financial challenges with SEA 1 and so forth. So.
Okay. Let's go to Spencer. If you can pull up the law enforcement, continuing ed, and public safety lit fund. We'll talk a little bit about police here. So you saw, obviously, police is a big department in your general fund. But this is one of the smaller funds that also goes. It's the LECE fund. Basically, you get some other charges, gun permits, et cetera, into this fund. You have some miscellaneous expenditures and then some capital spending out of this. It's a very small fund, but we anticipate it's going to be fine. The bigger one is public safety lit, which is the next slide. So public safety lit, I talked about this earlier. This fund will stay in existence through 2028 at today's current legislation. You get about $1 million or $1.1 million in revenue. It is income tax coming in here. If nothing changes in the legislation in 29, the revenue from this fund, that $1 million, depending on what you guys decide and the county decides, but that revenue gets rolled into that municipal lit and all goes into the general fund. You have a healthy cash balance in public safety lit, so you'd still have money sitting in this fund, but you need to spend that money down per its restricted uses. in that fund before you would shut down that fund. Nothing you need to do today, but I just want you thinking through how this will work kind of in Lori's world. Is what you'll see is as that revenue goes away in 29, still I would recommend you're going to spend stuff out of public safety lit, and you're going to spend this fund down to zero because the money sitting here are still restricted per public safety lit restrictions, so police or fire. Okay. When this $1 million becomes municipal lit, it goes to the general fund on an annual basis. That has really no restrictions because the general fund's restriction is any legal purpose of the city. I don't say that to like say that's good, that's bad. I think it's always good when there's less restriction. What I would say is from a police and potentially fire standpoint, you just can't lose sight of you've been generating $1 million plus that's going all to police. When it goes to general, you're going to have to kind of keep track of that because you're going to have to move a lot of police cost over to the general eventually. That makes sense? When you look at 27, then you get down into the disbursements. I've highlighted the big numbers on capital. We'll look at that detail here in a little bit, but it's about $1.6 million. Let's just go to capital next, Spencer. Yeah, you can see what makes that up. Some of the big numbers coming out of public safety is that police refurb that the mayor was talking about. We do have 1.25 million sitting in here. We have some TIF and some CDIT that would be used. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Encrypted radio replacements, Chief, if you want to talk about that, and then the Axon and camera body cams as well.
Yeah, so excuse me, the encrypted radios are supposed to be legislation in 2027 that will all law enforcement radios be encrypted, which basically means to revert back to the Kendall shooting, that shooting happened going on. I know in one hour there were 17,000 people missing. So on top of that, the encrypted radios will allow only law enforcement to really hear what's going on in street shootings. So the legislation is supposed to make that effect in 2027, or they push that back. I believe something happened. So what we're doing is trying to budget to get that done. The county has already funded money and is set up and ready to go. Must be the largest department in the county, but also having the school equipment. That's why ours a big portion go to fund our radio and then everybody counts. So everybody in the county has agreed upon it. Just waiting for the funds to get there to get it done. Hoping to have it done.
So they have a 7 day.
As soon as the funding's ready to be done.
But I mean, have they set a date? We have to have it done?
No,
Okay.
no.
Got pushed back.
Yeah,
Okay.
but the county has decided to move forward collectively.
The county meeting, that includes Butler, Garrett, Waterloo.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
But in order to be safely done, everybody's got to do it nice.
Does
It goes back to the early, late 90s when Auburn was only 800, and Auburn comes up with Auburn made no sense. And then Garrett County could not get it. We've all got to be able to talk to them, explain to be able to talk to them just like last night. That crash with the deputy. We'll all be able to talk.
Now, will Garrett pick up their equipment?
Correct.
The cost of their equipment?
Each individual agency is picking up their own.
Okay.
Does Allen County have it?
Allen County, Fort Wayne, are all in.
Good.
They've had it for 7 years.
Noble
Noble is not. They're
working on it, and Steuben is too. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought we talked about that.
And we started a few years ago, like this is only a handful of units that we need to purchase. Over the last couple of years, as they purchased the new cars and so forth, and they've purchased those encrypted radios to go in the cars, even handhelds. So we've been doing it over the last few years, but this is to get it complete. And how many was it? It was a low number. Wasn't it 12?
I think 12 cars and 27.
Yeah.
It's like Chief was talking about his fire bunker. 3 years ago, the police radios were about 1,800. Now they're 42.
Yeah.
So it's
Is Central going to have their own? I mean, are they paying for their own out there?
it's already done.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're doing Central's waiting on
Everybody else.
to come on board.
Mhm.
And PD's applied last 2 years for a grant to help cover this, and we just weren't fortunate enough to get it. So we've got to bite the bullet at this point because we're one of the last few. Either Garrett or Waterloo's already done as well.
Yeah, they're, I think,
Or both?
us and Butler this week.
Yeah.
Spencer, go back to the bottom line of public safety lit, if you will, the negative cash flow. You'll notice it's $1.2 million negative cash flow. That's primarily driven by the building that we're talking about, that placeholder that's sitting there for that. But keep in mind, public safety lit has a little over $3 million right now. So not overly concerned with that. And also keep in mind, if legislation doesn't change in 29, this fund's effectively you're going to have to spend this money down anyway over time. So if you think that project is, you want to move that forward, that's why we're recommending a good sized chunk comes from this fund.
In 2029, do you see when it gets moved to the general, that would just be a line item then for police, or what?
We would move, what we'll need to do is, this is what we're doing in other communities.
Theoretically.
Sit down with Lori and you all and say, okay, what are you going to have left at the end of 2028? Let's hypothetically say it's 1.5 million if we spend some of this down the next few years. What I would look at is, what can we move the entire line item to the police department in the general
budget.
fund? Because police has multiple line items in the department, but things like they already have a salaries and wage
Right.
line. Let's just move that whole thing over because it's easier budgeting for Lori
Simple.
then, and not
Okay.
try to move like percentages.
Yep.
So what I would anticipate in your 29, 30, it's going to take you a few years to spend the rest down, is you'll start to see line items in this go away because they'll all be being spent
Shifted.
from general.
Eric, can you go back to capital?
Yes.
The mayor and I talked yesterday, Monday, we're gonna be applying for a $300,000 grant, which would cover, it's not a, add on a tax on for tasers, but also provide money from the interview room in the police department. If I remember correctly, when we've done the grants before, we have a $300,000 for 2027 on here, we also put it into revenues.
Yes.
The off balance
Okay.
of that, it's 100% match, so it doesn't cost us anything. It's just the city has to pay for it and it's reimbursed 100%.
Correct. From
Yeah.
council perspective, I would just say, hey, if we get the grant, we're doing it. It's a wash. But from Lori's perspective, she has to have authority to spend that $300,000, even though it's grant dollars. She has to show it coming in as a revenue, as a grant, going out as a line 400 item.
Could we add that to this?
Yeah, like we talked, yeah, we'll get that added. And also to elaborate off that, the interview room, any of that equipment would have been included in the cost of the remodel and expansion of the new building. So that would be one less expense there if we get the grant, so.
Great. Yep, just send us those numbers and Spencer and Amber can add it in on both sides. Let's go to CCI, CCD, CDIS. So these aren't necessarily, obviously no department head necessarily owns these or department owns these. These are, CCI is your cigarette tax dollars. CCD is that 5-cent tax rate. It's property tax dollars. You guys reestablished that a few years ago. And then CDIT, County Economic Development Income Tax. Everybody always thinks, well, it's County Economic Development. Does that have to go to economic development? It's really unrestricted in illegal use, just like the general fund. It is income tax, though. I'll talk about that in a few. CCI, your cigarette tax, you get about $30,000. We're not budgeting anything in 27, so you'll build that up. CCI is just like general. You can spend it for anything. That's one of those you usually build up for a while, then use it on something capital driven. Next slide. CCD, that's that 5-cent tax rate, generating about $630,000. It does have circuit breaker impact that's going up like the other funds. Again, CCD, you traditionally spend that on capital. That does have some capital items, 700,000. We'll show you here in a minute. If you do spend the full 700,000, you would have a little bit of a negative cash flow in CCD. You have very healthy cash balances there. I'm not concerned at all about it, and it's all capital. The bigger one, CDIT. Income tax, no property tax. You're getting about $1.6 million. There is some transfer in from the AES fund. That is for a bond issue that you guys took out several years ago. AES had some, a portion of that bond went to them. So that's why they send $280,000 every year through in Lori's book. So when she makes the bond payment, they pay their portion of it. You'd see that in debt service down here, the $480,000. So AES pays a little bit more than half of that debt service payment. But the big thing for CEDA is capital. 2.3 million is budgeted. You'd see it just like public safety lit, about a $1.3 million negative cash flow. CEDA is sitting on, 1 second here. CEDAT has, at the end of 25, almost $6 million. So I'm not overly concerned. It's the same message I gave you guys earlier. It's more of a decision of, is the capital line items in here something that you guys want to see push forward? If so, that's why we're saying use some CEDAT dollars. Before we go to capital though, same story as public safety lit. Getting about 1.1 right now, depending on what happens in 2029, what your income tax rate is, whether you opt into the county, opt out on your own. This goes away though, goes into that municipal lit rate that goes into your general fund. Same thing as you guys were asking about before, Natalie, it would be the same way. This one's a little bit harder because you don't have very many line items. What we probably would recommend you do, keep paying the debt service from here because there's debt outstanding, and then just use this on capital probably in 29, 30, 31 till you run this down. And then different from public safety lit, what you got to get your mind wrapped around here is, as public safety lit revenue moves, you're going to be moving those police costs to the police department in the general fund. What you're doing here is, as this moves to the general fund, you're moving more capital line items into general. So where in the past you haven't spent much out of general on paid 2030s, you're going to start seeing capital as a significant line item in your general fund. Go to the capital page, Spencer.
Here.
Yep.
Going back, so DeKalb County has an innkeeper's tax. If Auburn was getting innkeeper's tax, it would really be. However, it's all going to the county.
Yes, I don't think you guys get any innkeeper's
So
tax.
my next question is, so every hotel is within the city of Auburn, regardless of police, fire, utilities, or whatever else. Is Auburn able to get that money from the county?
When you say in any way,
We're providing all the services, but it's only.
there, you don't have, like, Auburn does not have an Auburn innkeeper's tax. It's a county innkeeper's tax. That's why they're getting the dollars. But when you say, hey, we can make, and I'm speaking totally hypothetically here, when you're saying, hey, we do all these services, shouldn't we get a portion of those dollars? I mean, you can do anything like that with overlapping units, almost like an interlocal, like, hey, you know, we're providing service. Why are we not getting some revenue or shifting some cost to you, et cetera? That's a county, city.
Should that be discussed in this must?
It's a different issue.
That's exactly what I was actually.
It's a different issue, Corey.
I'm not saying don't discuss it. I would not discuss it in must, and this is why. Must is confusing enough already. And I'm not saying innkeeper's tax isn't important. I'm not saying it's not revenue. You're talking multi-millions of dollars of revenue in must. You don't want to get distracted with, you know, a few $100,000 on this. I think it's a separate discussion, but worth the discussion, not venue though. Yeah, I think that's more of a you guys in the county discussion, not a
We'll discuss.
legislative fix.
What's the? It's 6%.
Well,
We just.
Mhm.
The innkeepers?
Mhm.
it was 5, but
I don't know.
it's going to 8.
Somebody said that.
It can be maxed out at 10.
But I think they went to 8.
They went to 8.
And that innkeeper's tax, though, I specifically the 3%, I believe that's what the county passed. Doesn't that 3% have to go to economic development initiatives?
I believe I'm not 100% sure.
EDC and tourism.
but I know there's a tourism component. I'm
Yeah.
not sure though the restriction, like
Gotcha.
if it's fairly loose. I can get you an answer on that, but I don't pretend to be a innkeeper's tax expert
We may
without-
need a couple roundabouts.
without looking it up.
But the city could adopt their own keeper's tax if they want to. Just kind of like Indianapolis.
There are provisions, and I can't remember if it takes special. Yes, there are municipalities that can have it. I'm just not sure, like, if you guys would qualify or not, or if it's special legislation. I can look that up too. Spencer, will you make that note, and I'll talk to Paige about that.
I mean, if we can fire out anyway.
It says they can use it for jail operations too. I'm just saying.
Capital line items that we talked about, though, coming from CEDAT, engineering on the railroad overpass that could be coming in a few years or would be coming. We already talked about Cindy and Grand staff. There's $100K in there. Potential getting ready City Hall remodel, police department remodel, the engineering planning for those. And then there is that 1.25 I talked about. That would be for the police department building reno. That's this portion of it. And then finally, out of streets, there is a Phillips Street extension construction. $850K would be coming from CEDAT. Questions, comments on those? I think we only have one more fund to go. TIF. All right, so redevelopment commission obviously controls this, but as the mayor talked about, there's a lot of discussion back and forth and collaboration on projects. TIF, you're bringing in about $3 million. You do get a pretty healthy interest earnings number, about $3.2 million in total a year. That has been growing each year. That's a good thing. That's a good management of your TIF districts to make sure that you're generating additional revenue each and every year. It means they're growing. You have some professional service, other services in charge of it. Primarily what TIF, the orange you can see, they spend $2 to $4 million a year on capital expenditures, budgeting 2.1 in 27. That still will leave them at $1 million positive cash flow. Next slide. What makes up that $2.1 million? Some of the payment on your Auburn Development Group project from a few years ago, downtown streetscape and parking, $400K, and then $1 million on the police department that the mayor talked about earlier.
Eric, oh, go ahead.
Approximate cash balance of this.
I believe the ending balance in December was a little over $4 million.
That sounds right, but let me double check that. Yeah, 4.8 at the end of
Okay.
December.
Mhm.
Yeah, and in 25 you see that negative 100 and, or was that for 20?
24, yeah, the negative about 1.7 million.
Yeah, that was due to the 1.5 that's committed to Veritas. But in 26, the 116,000 that you see, that was due to the redevelopment commission stepped up and assisted WPC with the 600,000 gallon CSO storage project and committed $1 million to that, and then committed $1.5 million to the State Road 8 project, the water main replacement. So was very fortunate, which actually helped when they were looking at their financing options from raising rates, even higher. So one question on this, Eric, though. So for 27, if we got our Cedar Street project out here that's starting in the fall, the street recon portion is in 27. That is going to be included in our CCMG when we apply in September. Can TIF be used as part of that match?
For a CCMG match, yeah, there's, as long as it's in or benefiting the TIF area, you can use anything.
Yeah, and it does. And that's the reason you see, he mentioned Phillips Street Extension. That one we have to pay for because it's not eligible. So we have looked at using it out here on Cedar Street, possibly even the next couple of years to take a little financial relief off of street, because it is going to benefit the entire TIF. And also, it'll be new curbs, sidewalks, gutters. It will not be used for any of the portion of the water or sewer, though, or storm.
Spencer, one thing is they were talking through 26 and those projects the mayor mentioned. Can you put a note? I want to make sure we reconcile those projects to the FSP as well for that year. Just make sure we have them all picked up. I believe that was all of the city side funds. Did I miss any pages that were in your packet?
You mentioned the upper street, NVH. I think right, 300,000.
Roughly. That's a match.
Would be the match for community presence. That's standard? We just grab that money, that's part of our CCMG match.
I wouldn't say everyone does that, but I would say the vast majority. It's just simple because that's the money you have to use for paving. So it's automatically, you cross that off in Lori's world for audit by using it on the match. Yep.
There's 300,000 of our matching community presence out of $1 million. We're going for the full $2 million. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, we have 300 coming out of MVH restricted, and then we have this 200,000. Off the top of my head here.
Yeah, I can pull it up here just a second.
Yeah, so there may be a little bit added to this one. That is correct. We had that conversation on Monday.
Yeah, you're getting your match from MVH and TIF right now on 27. But, if you guys want to add to your, depends how much you want to go to for CCMG.
It'd be about another, trying to think.
So we're thinking about a $1.5 million
Yeah.
project.
So 250,000.
So yeah, you need another
250,000, but
a lot
we
of times
may
you look
add.
at CDIT, CCD, y'all have money, any of those. That can,
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I know you guys are talking or will be talking with potentially about, or maybe it's already started with the municipal wheel tax stuff and how that would work out.
I can elaborate on that if you'd like when you get to that. We've actually got it put together, I think, be ready to present, but we got the basis of it down.
So make sure I don't misspeak here because I know we've had several back and forth with Zach. I think it's been confirmed with state board, right? That's who, or was it DLGF gave you an email and in DMV? Yes. The process you'll go through, and I'll rely on Zach with all the legal documents. But at the end of the day, what would establish is kind of untethering from the county wheel tax, but it would not be a stacked tax to your residents. So they shouldn't see a change really from what they're doing now. It's just then those dollars are directly through the city wheel tax and come directly to the city. I think the last estimate we had, Spencer, correct me if I'm wrong, but it would come in 28. Was it 260,000 roughly? Is that right? Is what we're calculating now, and that's based on just information we can get from DMV on how many registrations we think would be city residents.
And that was if we implemented the max.
If you implemented the max, yep.
We're looking at passenger vehicles currently through the county where we're paying that as $750. The commercial was $5.
Sounds right.
So in the ordinance that Zach's preparing, we left passenger vehicles the same, $750. But I think we increased the commercial. And that is trailers over 9,000 pounds. I think trucks over 11,000 pounds is the trigger there, which won't affect, I don't know, I think that's only going to affect those larger commercial trucks. But we're looking at maybe $25 on those. I mean, that's more wear and tear on our roads than a passenger vehicle. So for it to be less than what residents are paying for their passenger vehicle, to me makes no sense. But they won't see any effect. We're just withdrawing from the county on that and implementing here so we qualify for the additional road fund. Because the way it stands, even though we're paying it, we don't qualify for it. We don't have the option to apply. So
It covers buses, recreational vehicles, semi-trailers, trailers more than 9,000 pounds, and trucks and tractors with clear expressways more than 1,000 pounds.
So I know, like, you two have businesses. What are the weights on your vehicles? I'm just curious.
My pump trucks are like 2,600 pounds,
Okay.
fully loaded.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, because, I don't think the intent's not to put the burden on the little businesses that we have, but those larger trucks, I mean, they're tearing our roads up. I don't want to say tear. They put more wear and tear on the roads than our standard vehicles. So, but that is something that Zach has put together at $750 for the excise and then $25 for the wheel tax. That we would need to present in August to have it filed in time with the BMV by September 1st. So,
And that would be in 28. Obviously, no decisions now, but we would anticipate or we'd recommend you use that then towards some of your CCMG match as well. So that would take up part of that, and it would be its own fund that Lori, you would budget out of, but it's fairly simple. It does increase. It increases your eligible grant. That increases if you go on your own.
They want you to do
They
that.
want you to.
They
adopt
want
it.
you to do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, I think that was it, unless there's other questions for Spencer or I.
Everybody good?
I just wanted to confirm one thing. So we are bumping up the CCMG project from 1 million to 1.5 in 27.
correct. Yeah. And then we'll be adding another 250 for a total of 450 then out of TIF,
Okay.
which will cover the Cedar Street.
I got a question on what's the timeline on having another meeting and a further update?
I actually have that right here. I have the timeline.
I don't need to see you. Blew out of lung there, didn't you? Yeah, blew out of lung there, didn't you?
We had middle of August.
Yeah, it looks like around the 20th.
Yep.
August 20th from 9 to 11. If that works, that's what we kind of have in the timeline that we put together. And I think these few minor changes, we've got a couple of the budgets that we're going to go back through again. I think there's 2 or 3 at most, just to see, okay, what can we tighten up a little bit.
And you should have the insurance stuff
Yeah,
by
insurance,
then too.
Yeah, insurance. should
And then
be
you're going to
covered.
work on your thing. Maybe by September, you thought? You, chief. You had to have an estimate on the tender. The tender.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't remember what it was called.
So, yeah, what we have to get wrapped up, other than, I'm not sure the time frame on the tender, we should be able to have
That can just be plugged
everything
in.
but that and the
Yep.
insurance done in the next week or so. So,
Cool.
About the time, I don't know if COLA increases or anything.
it'll yeah, once we get the insurance premiums back, and we've got to have another we got to have another discussion with them.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. Meeting adjourned.